Hello, I'm Nathan. I'm the developer of Coco Loco, which is a game, if you haven't heard of, you can check out the playlist here for a bunch of devlogs. But today I want to talk kind of more personally and unedited. This is different from probably stuff you've seen if you check out my other videos. I very heavily edit my stuff, but in regards to time and energy and effort and maybe trying to make things more interpersonal with you, the viewer, and me, the content creator, this is going to be mostly unedited. I'm going to have B-roll obviously to make it more engaging for you, but you're going to get a lot more ums and ahs and tangents. So if that's not what you're into, then feel free to go to another video and watch my other stuff, or let me know in the comment section, hey, this isn't the content I want for. But if you're happy with it, then just put it in the background and let's talk through today's topic, which is things I wish I knew before starting my game project. Some of these things being more technical and things hopefully I can just warn you about before jumping into a certain version of Unity. Or, sometimes when you haven't dealt with a certain technology, you can be kind of naive about, for example, motion capture. Or all you need with the Kinect is just the adapter and the software and stuff. You pay $100 for, whatever. Totally not true. There's a lot more technical aspects to things, and we look sometimes at things with like rose tinted glasses, in certain aspects of things. For example, with Unreal Engines 5, Nanite and Lumen and stuff, there's still hurdles to jump through. And if we didn't have those hurdles, then making games would be so much easier and so much more things would get done. But obviously, before really diving into this project, there were things that I thought would be kind of easier or the more basic things to do that have either cropped up with an issue or a bug in the engine which I didn't know about, or I've just overlooked a certain aspect that if I had just done more research or kind of searched how to do this thing with this method and figuring out that's not how you use that. I'll get into that with state machines and enumerators and coroutines. Yeah, so let's just get straight into it. And the first thing I wish I kind of knew when working on my game project Coco Loco is with state machines and mono behaviors. So I understood that when you make a state machine, with normal scripts in Unity, you would use a mono behavior. So you attach that script to a game object, and then you can call certain API functions from mono behavior and Unity in general. And it's how scriptable programming works. But with state machines, you derive from a state machine basically. So you don't derive from mono behavior. You derive from the different states. You make a class and all sorts of stuff. I don't understand it completely. I just can make it work, which is also a lot of things that you would do when making games. You won't understand or be able to explain and teach everything. Sometimes you just know enough to say, okay, if you do this, this will happen, and that's what I can give you. I'm not a tutorial game dev channel. I'm not here to, say I've got a degree in or diploma, I should say, in design with video games, because I do, but it's not enough to be qualified to teach. I can help you, of course, and troubleshoot, which is most of game dev as well. But one thing that I found when working on Coco Loco is I thought state machines would be really good for my NPCs, because they're going to have different states, from walking into the store, wanting them to line up and sit down and read the menu and order and all this sort of stuff. I could do it in separate scripts, but obviously having a state machine with those state machine scripts is more logical, and that method makes a lot more sense in architecture sense with the whole project. One issue, and it's been mostly really good. It's what you're meant to do, but I've just run into an issue recently where there's a part where I want the NPC to wait a few seconds as they read the menu. So when they go from one state to another, I want a timer basically to count down, and then when the timer finishes, it moves on to the next state, which in the game project will be them reading the menu, and then they'll raise their hand and say, okay, I'm ready to order. Now, I could do this in just a simple update function, but update functions, especially in this instance when I'm having lots of NPCs and in later levels, like I don't actually know how big levels are going to be, so I don't know how many timers we're going to have going at once. And, if I want to publish this thing in, just to save my future self the headache, and on the coincidence and the dream that this actually does come out on Switch one day, I don't want to have to rework this and figure this out in an update function if it's going to, overload a console or whatever. And so what I wanted to do, which is the smarter thing to do, which is to use a coroutine, an enumerator, which basically we start the coroutine and then it counts down, and then once the count is stopped, then it moves on to the next state. We script it so that, okay, we're in this state now, we're reading the menu, start the coroutine so that when that coroutine is done, when the time is finished, then we just switch to the next state. Here's the thing. You can write out the enumerator. You can write out the coroutine that says, okay, wait for this many seconds and then switch to the state. Or, okay, to be honest, in the script, it's not actually a state, it's a function. So within the state machine, I have these layers of functions that basically go boom, 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 because I was lazy and didn't want to write a whole other sub-state machine. I just thought, okay, it's going through steps, I can just make it as functions. That's all well and good, except for the fact that despite being able to write the coroutine within the script, I can't actually start the coroutine within the script. Confusing, I know, but for some reason, or the reason being that it's not mono behavior, although it can write out the function of a coroutine, an enumerator, an enum basically, I can't start it because that derives from mono behavior. And so, although we can write it out, we can't start it. So the quick fix would be to create a new script that would get the script that just created it and get that coroutine in that script to start it. Which is probably what I'm gonna have to do because every other fix is just too confusing and annoying and whatever. But that's one thing I wish I'd known before doing that, and trying to figure out a smarter way of maybe using a scriptable object, or maybe for that state somehow managing to add mono behavior back into it or whatever. So that's just something that, I was plowing along this NPC state machine. I was like, okay, they're lining up, they're sitting down, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, okay, they're going through the different, menu functions. I want that to wait for a few seconds. I'll do my usual fix of just having an enum, a coroutine, whatever, adding it in, and I can't do it because it derives from behavior. So that's something that, a long tangent, and I could keep just repeating myself and saying, don't expect to start coroutines in a non-mono behavior script. Most of the time, it's fine if you're just doing a separate class or whatever, but when you're deriving from a state machine or whatever, it doesn't work. So just so you know in the future, you got to make sure what you're missing out by having a non-mono behavior script in Unity. What can't you do anymore? And that's something I'm definitely going to look up next time I'm going to do something. Although let's be real, I'm probably just going to have another issue figuring out, being naive and be like, oh, no, I can do this, I can do that, and then a roadblock coming up saying, but you can't do this one important thing that you want to do that's going to, help you make your game. Second thing I found when working on this project, and luckily I found a fix, is importing animations from a model. So the way that I work with the NPC and the character models is that I download animation clips from Mixamo, which is this kind of Adobe branch where there's free animations, and then I import those animations into Blender along with the character model, and I've basically rigged it so that I just import the clip from Mixamo, and then it kind of matches up with the Blender model I have because that's been rigged with the same software that animation clip comes from. Long story short, sometimes I like to adjust my clips, add in new clips, might want to change. Like right now, I've got the basic clips, but in the future, I'm going to want to adjust them, make them custom, and they're a good ground base for me to build off my own animations. For example, walk cycles. It's just so much easier just to adjust a current walk cycle than it is to make your whole own one, basically. Which is, great. It works. In Unity, that's kind of their whole marketing campaign, is the fact that, you can switch between these different softwares and it just works. Fun fact though, it doesn't. There's an issue that I've run into where I would update animations or change things, but then inside the Unity editor, nothing would happen. If I did a new model and imported those animations, it would work. But for some reason, when I changed things from that already imported model, nothing would update in terms of animations. Luckily, I found a fix for this, and if you've just had this issue as well, I hope I can just spread this out to the world and let you all know there's a fix. What you do is you close your project, you go into the files where that project is, where the model is, sorry, and you delete its meta file. Unity meta file that it creates for every script model asset you import into the engine, with that specific model with those animations if they're not importing in. And it's probably, works lots of other stuff too if you're adjusting an asset and things don't update, is to delete the meta file, and then hopefully a lot of your issues be resolved, because then once you delete that meta file, reopen the project, it'll create a new one, which will hopefully bring in all the new things, because basically it re-imports the asset. I tried re-importing, just right-clicking, clicking re-import, but it doesn't always work. So there's that. Cool, just making sure we're still recording. Um, the third thing I wish I had done before starting my game project is learning Unity editor extensions. Now, these things have always been scary to me because it's, in the technical artist spectrum where basically you're making tools within the tool, which, for me, someone who has always felt very doubtful on my own skills when it comes to making games and have always tried to reach a high bar. For some reason, just editor extensions terrified me because it was a whole other ballgame. I wanted to understand C# and modern behavior before I even touched Unity extensions, but I started doing it more recently, and I'm so glad I did. And I wish I'd done this 10 years earlier. I wish I had, instead of the way I started out making games, basically, was I would download Unity and I would work on menu screens. I would just do like main menu settings, and with the old on GUI, which is now deprecated, of course. But that's how I learnt to program. Basically, I would get templates, and then I would adjust them and kind of understand, okay, X, Y, Z, this and that, functions and stuff. And that's how I got comfortable with scripting, basically, inside a game engine, was doing that. And if I had known that basically editor extensions with that and then working with different API to get the editor to do stuff, man, I would have saved so much time, especially with my VR games like Fun Factory. Right now, I have two working functions. One finds the player in a scene, and one finds the spawner. And I want to work on a whole range of different things. For example, I want the compositing and the lighting and stuff to be good. And one of the ways you do that is to make things more primitive. So when you're working on lighting or on color, you will make things black and white. That's why lots of artists who actually will just use tonal colors. They won't, sorry, not colors, tones of light to light a scene or draw a scene first, and that helps create the mood before you add in the color, because sometimes people get distracted by color when really you're just working the shades. And so that's a little extension I want to add there, where I can just, in the scene view, turn on black and white and then kind of see how things look, maybe make things blurrier, do like a primitive extension where everything is just all shapes, and so I can kind of see, in regards to maybe UI or the player versus a prop, what is more prominent. So then when I'm actually working on certain design elements, I can figure that stuff out. I don't know how much of that stuff I'm actually going to work into Coco Loco itself, but I'm definitely going to start teaching myself more Unity extensions with the editor tool, because one of the things I want to do in the future is be a technical artist, and that's probably one of the bullets I've had to bite more recently to suck it up and start working towards that goal. And I wish I'd done it sooner, because, man, for example, one of the other things I really want to get working as well is when re-importing a model, like how with the animations and model problems we had. Sometimes the namings, it will bring in the armature, the skeleton name, and then add that onto the clip, and that's really annoying when you didn't name that to begin with, or it can get very messy. And sometimes they're also not defaultly set to loop, which is something else that you might want. And so it'll be great in the future where I can just reference that game object within the asset folders and say, okay, get the clips, and in all the range of clips, I want you to get rid of that first section that says armature and the line between, and also set all the clips to loop. And that saves me having to go and click and change them all manually. It just boom, 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 done. If it's an extra click because something didn't go through, that's fine. I don't care about that. It's better than doing the other things. So if you haven't already and you're starting to get confident with making your games, I suggest learning the Unity extensions editor tools. It's Unity editor extensions. That's what they're called. Learn how to make them, make simple basic things. There's a really good website from this guy. I'll link his stuff in the description, where he talks about how to make a tool that lets you just click to drop in assets into your scene. So have a look at that, start learning stuff about that, because fun fact, There's lots of 3D artists, lots of programmers, lots of whatever, but there's very few technical artists. And if it's something like for me, I'm very balanced when it comes to programming and logic and art, like I kind of a bit of both. One of the things that when I've talked to people in the industry is say you should be a technical artist because they kind of need both. So I'm starting to learn it, and I wish I'd done it so much sooner. Yeah. So, talking about things I understand and don't understand, I wish I had learnt certain methods or tools or whatever in separate, smaller projects before putting them into Coco Loco. It might also count before even working on Coco Loco in general. There's certain methods and things I wish I'd known before working on the project. One of the things I still don't completely understand, and I'm just going to keep watching tutorials until it sinks in, is scriptable objects. I'm slowly understanding them now more and more, but I wish what I'd done is just follow a tutorial or just make a blank scene with a scriptable object in it and really break it and mold it, because that's one of the reasons why I think I learn things sometimes is because things are broken and then I'm going to fix it. I think scriptable objects and state machines and probably getters and setters, lots of more C# things I wish I had dabbled in before just jumping into making a project. We'll get onto the whole jumping into things too quickly later down the line because that's something that's also on my list here. I want to do a document. But yeah, I wish that if there were certain methods I understand, I would either have a blank project that I just use for that one thing, or I'd have like a project where I just made or try to teach myself certain elements of game development, instead of trying to implement it within a project that I hold very dear to my heart. And luckily I'm working, it's on the web, it's through a GitHub and stuff, so obviously I can revert back to things if I've broken stuff, which I did today with the character animation, which just that just keeps popping up and giving me issues. So I wish I had done that. I wish if there were things I weren't confident in, I had been smart enough to make a separate project to experiment and learn and kind of get a hold of those things before I just jump into implementing it in the game project. Yeah, yeah, that's something else I'd done. But going on with jumping the gun, I wish that I had thought through things more methodically and that I had measured twice and cut once. And this will come back to game design and textures and models and everything. I wish that I wasn't so quick to get something done. And it's something for me that I've, working independently, having all these other outside things affecting my game project. I wish that I could just relax a bit and be more methodic with what I want to do. Sometimes I'll sit down in a day and be like, okay, for example, the stream. I should have just done a basic glass instead of trying to tackle a bigger glass. Or what I should have done is been very methodic and kept working on that glass for a long time to actually learn the process. Which I ended up kind of doing, I guess, but in certain instances, like the player model, there's things about it that aren't perfect that I don't need to fix. One of those things being the rig, but also the actual base mesh. And I eventually had to work on the facial animations, give them clothes, all sorts of things like that. And I wish that I had just either worked with primitives, basic capsules, and get everything else working first. Because animations, when you've got it all set up, they're pretty basic to trigger. Like there's not any errors you have is usually just your fault, and if you look at things close enough, you actually see the issue that you've made. But I wish that I wasn't so quick to set up a scene and then texture the scene and then put in lighting for the scene, because you've probably seen in my previous projects, I keep changing the scene and moving things around. And I've done it again recently. I put in new lighting and I've started using Pro Builder and all sorts of stuff. And look, I feel like we're getting closer to, each time it does get better and better, which is a good thing. But I wish that I could have been more patient with myself and just slowly worked on it, taken a break from certain things, come back, revisited, adjusted, things like that, then quickly doing it half-assedly, I guess is the most polite way I could say it, and then come back to it, have to fix it again and again and again and again, until eventually I get it right and I'm satisfied with it. Part of it is just me being a perfectionist with my game project, but part of it's also me just rushing to things too quickly and not taking my time. I know I'm going to spend a few weeks probably working on the character models for both the player and the NPC, in regards to their rig, in regards to their model, and how the whole process of that character is going to work within the engine. I'm going to revisit it once more, and hopefully, making this video will give me enough enthusiasm to work through that to get it working. So, yeah. Next thing is working with a team. Now, starting off, and I did mention this in a previous video, is that I was working with a team. I've since kind of stepped away from that. I'm working with one individual who's reached out to me, which, we'll see how that goes. So far, so good. But one of the things I realized when I was quite overwhelmed when I reached out, because this was something I was very secluded with, and it was actually my wife who said, dude, well, she really said, babe, it was like, you're working too hard, you're trying to do too much. It would be great if you could, handball some of these things off to other people. And I thought, I've done that before and it never works out. And so I did a tweet on Twitter, for those who don't know, and I got an amazing group of people to work on it. So I'm like, really talented people. Obviously some of them went their ways, others I've not heard from, and I guess others were just like, man, your management skills aren't the best for this. And that's one thing I realized when making the project so large. It wasn't massive, it was like probably 5 or 6 people, which is, a considerable amount, but we had between 2 to 4 people who were consistently showing up and working and things. But one of the things I found, especially when it came to design elements and programming, is that I changed from being a game developer and I was still the creative lead, but I turned into a lot more of a producer role. And so I was managing tasks and talking with certain people and saying what they needed to do, and if there was deadlines and this and that, and this is what I want. And pretty much I was trying to explain all of my ideas repeatedly to people in different disciplines several times over the course of the week. And so a lot of my time was writing design documents and sprint plans and getting mood boards and all sorts of different things. And so I was doing a lot of producer side and things, lots of design work, lots of paperwork, management basically of people, who, by the way, I wasn't paying, and I wasn't getting paid for it either, to do work for me that there's this saying I heard where if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, which is true in most instances when people actually, you can rely on them. But it came to the point where my programmer, he was doing a great job. But he basically said, I got a job, which is good for him, because the whole reason why we did this project is for all of us to get recognized and get jobs in the industry. And so he left, and I started hearing less and less from certain people. I started getting less and less motivated, because instead of working on the project that I loved, I was working more on explain to people about the project that I loved, but not actually working on the project. And so the project wasn't progressing that much, but people were talking to me about the project. And so it felt like basically I was pitching these ideas to my friends and family all over again. And then in my head there, I was saying, what have you got to show for it? And so I kind of stepped back a bit and started a new branch of the project and started working independently again on it, because it was quite honestly just a bit too much for me. And so if you're going to be working in a group, either all have a shared vision and understand what you're making, share the load when it comes to things like producers and managing your time and energy and reporting in, or make sure that you have the time to do this, or you've had the resources, or you're just really good, or you just enjoy doing it. If you're happy to give up your time making the game and instead planning how the game is made, and don't be that person who's like overscoping because other people are doing the job for you. Yeah, just know when you go into a group setting, especially if you're working remotely and you've got different time zones, which we did, it can be incredibly difficult, and you're working less on the game if that isn't, if your role is more in the creative decision making, creative vision. You're going to be working less on the actual development and more on everything else. And so as someone, for me, who was working independent, the whole reason why I was doing it and loving it is because it's just me diving in and making the game. It wasn't having to do any of this other design aspect and paperwork, basically. And so again, if you want to work in a group setting, either be local, and so you can explain and point and look at things and do stuff a lot more easily, or be ready to give up your time making the game to explaining how you want the game to be. Yeah, my my last bit of things I wish I kind of gone in knowing to, and look, some of the stuff I've gone in and I'm going to change. I'm going to try to change one thing or another. I just know that it's not going to change. For example, with the state machines or the way in which I work, it's a bit harder to change habits in the ways in which I think and feel than it is to learning and experience of how something technically worked. Um, but this is one thing that I think lots of people do, and I think if you aren't looking out for these resources, then you probably should when starting your project or when you're working on it as well, because that's what I'm going to be doing. And that's to get a budget to buy assets and consultation work and anything else that you can basically throw money at to make your life easier. One of the things I want in my game are waypoints. Well, that's how you find them when when googling, how to make this thing in Unity. But basically, there are going to be little bubbles over the NPCs' heads that will say when they're ready to order something, what they ordered, kind of like how you see in Penguin Diner. But I want it to be so that when you actually go out of view, the bubble stays in the corner of the screen. I've got kind of a system of that working a little bit, but it's not the best. That's something I feel like I can easily buy an asset, which is there's one on the asset store, and just implement it into the project, and boom, a lot easier. Same with consultation work. I wish I had just talked to people who maybe had worked on stuff before and said, okay, what's the best method of doing this or that, or even just understanding. For example, when you want to make a menu system or a delivery system or some sort of in-game system, I wish I'd just gone to a programmer and said, okay, here's what I'm trying to do. Please, I'll pay you $50 for your time. Tell me, what do I need to be Googling to figure out the system? What do I need to script for these things to work? Because sometimes, you can know C sharp, but you don't always know the best methods or the pseudocode. Basically, you're asking for some cheating help when it comes to making a pseudocode, what to Google, what to find on Stack Overflow, and to copy and paste into your project. And also stuff like logo design. I think that's something like I'm very iffy with using Fiverr and stuff because I've used it in the past, and despite my hefty pay of some, I haven't been satisfied with the project, even though going back and forth, they've made changes they've said, but also miscommunicating. Something I'm definitely going to do is pay for a logo design, because I've tried doing it and I just don't have the patience to make it to the quality that I want. I think in that regards, I can at least pay someone that I can get annoyed at, and they have to put up with me because I'm paying them to do a logo. If that's you, comment down below or DM me on Twitter and say you can do logo designs, show me some of your work, and we'll get talking. Maybe you can make something for me. But yeah, definitely just, I know this game is a personal project of mine, but even just setting aside a bit of savings, $10, $20 a week, a month, or whatever, setting a budget of, $100 for the next 6 months or whatever. Stuff I can spend just to, not stress on everything so much and to be satisfied. Because one of the things that really keeps this project going for me is when I realize that something has been developed on. Something's improved, something's grown, something's better. So I think, paying $20 for a Unity asset and importing it and it just working, or, seeing all the work that's been done already for me in the asset and then implementing it into the project, stuff like that is just going to be so much better for me. So, yeah, that's that. Those are the things that I wish I knew when working on my game project. Let me know if you're working on a game project and there's anything you wish you knew before you dived in. I'm sure there's always something. We always naively say, especially when you're starting out, I want to make a giant MMORPG, but then you realize you don't even know how to make a character move or how to do an inventory system or stuff like that. So, excuse me. Unedited videos are just great. They just take you all out at once. But yeah, that's been my project. If you enjoyed this video, then please do leave a like. If you have a suggestion or want to know something more about my development experience or my Unity project, Coco Loco, again, comment section. Sorry, there's a quick cut there because I started doing a tangent of something that I was just like, nah, we don't need that. Anyways, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and if you're not already, then please do subscribe and share this video around with your friends and family.